Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, my friends. God's blessings upon you. Let's praise the Lord together, my friends. We have all awakened in God's shelter. Now we've come to praise His name together. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, my friend. My friend. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, my friend. My friend. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Hello, everyone out there in Facebook land. We don't know if you're here with us right now, but whenever you see this feed, we'd like to say hello, even if it's not morning. Hello. And we see here in our Zoom, we've got Sean, we've got Gilbert, and we've got Taranae. Hello, Taranae. How are you? Hey there, Gilbert. Hello, Husham. How you doing, Daryl?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. And behind the camera, of course, we have the lovely and talented Mimi Ha. She hasn't been with us for a few weeks, but we're so glad she's here. Oh, Daryl, I meant to ask you, did you get your shirt pre-approved?
Actually, no, I didn't. Is this okay, Nini?
Oh yes.
Okay.
And your pants go right into it. It matched perfectly.
Yeah, I was asking because what I was going to say is there might be some notes for you later on. I don't know. I mean, I like the shirt, but we don't know because mine was pre-approved. I just want to make that clear.
Oh, it's okay. It was pretty.
Now, folks, today is really a big day for us because we've been, for the last year since the lockdown, we've been working with, if you've been with us in the past, you know that we've been choosing all of our content from the book. Oh my goodness, I've already forgotten the name of the book, man.
Spiritual reality.
Yes, the spirit. Baha'u'llah's teachings on spiritual reality. I guess I'm so excited about the new book. So after much deliberation, we decided that we were going to go ahead and start on another book because we really had finished with the other book and they had started actually repeating. We had repeated a couple of chapters. And so we're going to be moving to a new book, and the book is The Proofs of Baha'u'llah's Mission. The Proofs of Baha'u'llah's Mission. Now we're going to be in this book for probably the bulk of the entire year, for another year, we should say. But it's The Proofs of Baha'u'llah's Mission. Yes, it looks just like the other one. The cover looks exactly the same, but it is a different book. The Proofs of Baha'u'llah's Mission. And it's just to give you a little bit of a lead in, because unlike the previous book, well, this takes us into a different direction. We'll just say that it takes us into a different direction. And for those people you may know, if you are not Baha'i, for those people that you know who are Baha'is, you may wonder what made them decide that that the Baha'i faith, number one, is real, that Baha'u'llah truly is a manifestation / messenger of God, prophet. What made us make that decision? Well, by the time we finish this book, maybe even well before we finish this book, you'll have a much deeper understanding of that. And so it would be a good idea to maybe start with a brief prayer, and then we're going to get into, we're starting with the preface of this book. And so let's just start with the unity prayer. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord. One other thing we need to point out is that, unfortunately, Camby's won't be with us today. He's always with us, always, but right now he's coming out of it. He's sick. Okay. I have to make it sound much loftier. He's coming out of an illness. He's actually recuperating quite swimmingly. No, he's sick and he's starting to do better, but he's not enough that he can actually be with us today. So Camby's, you're in our prayers, and I don't know if Farah, his wife, will be here, but Farah, you're in our prayers too, because you have to put up with Camby's. So,
like me, I have to put up with Tony Bowers.
But no, Camby's, you are in our prayers, and we love you, and we hope you get better real soon. And we see Geety just popped on. Hi there, Geety. How are you? We hope you're doing well. But again, we are starting today with a brand new book, The Proofs of Baha'u'llah's Mission. And I kind of feel like we're sort of a devotion, and as you said, a deepening, and a book club, because we're actually dealing, we don't come up with this stuff on our own. These are all sanctioned, approved books, and I'm getting a signal that we need to hurry up and move on. So, when you said preface, you included the life and teachings of Baha'u'llah in that preface, right?
No, just the preface.
I don't have 10 pages for the preface.
Oh, the life and teachings of Baha'u'llah.
Oh, so
of course.
we have different editions then. Oh my goodness. I think they just changed the name. Okay, my preface is your introduction. You must have a later edition then.
I have an introduction.
Okay, because my okay, yeah, you have it. Okay, yeah, it's the same. I'm looking at the words. Okay, it's the same. But you meant actually starting with the life and teachings of Baha'u'llah.
Right.
Which is a good idea. That's what I was questioning, whether we should do the preface or not. And we're still getting the hurry up, move it on soon. So today, for anyone, you've heard the name Baha'u'llah, probably don't know much about him unless you're a Baha'i. And even if you're a Baha'i, you might not know as much about him as you'll know when we finish this section. It is a bit lengthy. We won't finish it today. So it's a two-parter chapter.
Sure.
I'm excited. So Daryl, would you like to begin?
Of course. This is about the life and teachings of Baha'u'llah. As the new millennium approaches, by the way, this was written before the new millennium started. As the new millennium approaches, the crucial need of the human race is to find a unifying vision of the nature of man and society. For the past century, humanity's response to this impulse has driven a succession of ideological upheavals that have convulsed our world and that appear now to have exhausted themselves. The passion invested in the struggle, despite its disheartening results, testifies to the depth of the need. For without a common conviction about the course and direction of human history, it is inconceivable that foundations can be laid for a global society to which the mass of humankind can commit themselves.
I got to stop you there, Daryl. And I'm going to ask you, Nini, because Nini's always very upfront if something's not clear to her. Is that easy for you to understand?
A little bit.
A little bit which way? Easy, or a little bit needs a little explanation?
I need a little bit explanation.
Okay, Daryl, you want to do that?
Well, you stopped me, so I thought.
Okay. I'm going to break it down to you folks. Well, this paragraph is basically saying that, again, at the time of its writing, for the past century, there's been this impulse in humanity, this impulse among humankind, in which things were changing so fast that they noticed all these changes. And so, you know, a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. It's just a passion invested in the struggle, despite its disheartening results, testifies to the depth of the need. People want answers, okay? And they're going different places to get those answers, okay? Again, it says, as the new millennium approaches, the crucial need of the human race is to find a unifying vision of the nature of man and society. And so that's what this is starting with, kind of giving us a little bit of context that society is changing. There's a lot of upheaval and people are looking for answers. Okay.
Okay. Such a vision unfolds in the writings of Baha'u'llah, the 19th century prophetic figure whose growing influence is the most remarkable development of contemporary religious history. Born in Persia, November 12, 1817, Baha'u'llah began at age 27 undertaking, let me start again. Born in Persia, November 12, 1817, Baha'u'llah began at age 27 an undertaking that has gradually captured the imagination and loyalty of several million people from virtually every race, culture, class, and nation on earth. The phenomenon is one that has no reference points in the contemporary world, but is associated rather with climactic changes of direction in the collective past of the human race. For Baha'u'llah claimed to be no less that messenger of God to the age of human maturity, the bearer of a divine revelation that fulfills the promises made to earlier religions, and that will generate the spiritual nerves and sinews for the unification of the peoples of the world.
So if you're wondering who Baha'u'llah claims to be, you just heard it. I mean, Baha'u'llah, you know now that he was born in November 12, 1812, and you know that the times that we are living in now, at least the times at that time, there's no contemporary equivalent to it. There's nothing like it right now. And he pointed out that he is the messenger of God to the age of human maturity. Now, there's a phrase there that's important that we point out. The bearer of a divine revelation, okay? The bearer of a divine revelation, fulfilling the promises made in earlier religions. So there are prophecies made about the coming of Baha'u'llah. And his coming will generate the spiritual nerves and sinews for the unification of the peoples of the world. And it's like, okay, we're just getting started. This is the early stages of this age. Okay.
Sounds pretty like a pretty heavy burden.
Yeah.
Okay, but one correction. He said November 12, 1812. It's November 12, 1817.
I said 1812.
1817.
Sorry. Pardon me, Baha'u'llah. I messed that up. 1817.
If they were to do nothing else, the effects which Baha'u'llah's life and writings have already had should command the earnest attention of anyone who believes that human nature is fundamentally spiritual and that the coming organization of our planet must be informed by this aspect of reality. The phenomenon lies open to general scrutiny. I'm going to say that it lies open to general scrutiny. For the first time in history, humanity has available a detailed and verifiable record of the birth of an independent religious system and the life of its founder. Equally accessible is the record of the response that the new faith has evoked through the emergence of a global community which can already justly claim to represent a microcosm of the human race. That is to say that it covers the world, basically, and all of humankind.
Yes.
Baha'u'llah's writings cover an enormous range of subjects, from social issues such as racial integration, the equality of the sexes, and disarmament, to those questions that affect the innermost life of the human soul. The original text, many of them in his own hand, and others dictated and affirmed by their author, have been meticulously preserved. For several decades, a systematic program of translation and publication has made selections from Baha'u'llah's writings accessible to people everywhere in over 800 languages.
So what do we now know? We now know when he was born. We know that he is claimed to be a messenger of God. Okay. We know that we are in the age of human maturity, and that when we read the writings of Baha'u'llah, what we're indeed reading is a divine revelation, and that this revelation is going to bring about the unification of the human race. But it also points out here, there's kind of a conditional statement here, or a conditional phrase for the reader of this information. It says Baha'u'llah's life and writings have already, wait a minute, if they were to do nothing else, the effects of Baha'u'llah's life and writings have already had, should command the earnest attention of, and here's that phrase, that condition, of anyone who believes that human nature is fundamentally spiritual. Human nature, fundamentally spiritual. And we know that his writings cover an enormous range. A lot of it, if you read a lot of his writings and a lot of the things that Baha'u'llah addresses, they sound like social issues. And indeed they are. And you know, I mean, when you think about, you know, who thinks spiritually about things like the equality of the sexes, disarmament, racial integration? The writings of Baha'u'llah go extensively into the equality. In fact, I don't even want to say the equality of the races, the fact that we're all one race. The fact that we're all, yeah. Okay. So now we get into the birth of Baha'u'llah's mission. I'm looking at you. The birth of Baha'u'llah's. I'm sorry. I'm shutting up, Daryl. I'll admit, I'm going to say this. I get excited about this stuff.
Obviously.
I do. I do. I get excited about it. And I often fall into that kind of mindset. Okay, that needs explaining. That needs explaining. Not that it's not clear, but I just feel like sometimes we need not necessarily explain, but emphasize the importance of it. I think that's mainly.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Maybe not what you're talking about. Okay, Christian is Christ follower. That's how Christian's name come out.
Mm-hmm.
So Baha'i is a Baha'u'llah follower?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the Baha'i.
We are called Baha'i.
Is that what it means?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because when somebody heard Baha'i, what is Baha'i? You know?
And they probably think of some kind of grass or.
Because it's not
Jewish.
English. No, because it's not English. So at the same time, they'll feel like, oh, this is not. It's some other religion. It's not even, you know, exists in America.
And I'm sure, Daryl, if you're like me, you've actually had to deal with those types of reactions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we're on Facebook, then we could, you know, tell more people about Baha'i. It's just not the same language of English, but it's still, you know, the
Right.
Baha'u'llah is God's messenger and that's follower of him.
Right.
Exactly.
Thanks for asking that question. That's important. Nini brings a different perspective, and so I like it when you ask those questions or give your point of view.
My baby perspective.
No, not your baby perspective. Okay, Daryl.
Baha'u'llah's mission began in a subterranean dungeon in Tehran, in August 1852. Born into a noble family that could trace his ancestry back to the great dynasties of Persia's imperial past, he declined the ministerial career open to him in government and chose instead to devote his energies to a range of philanthropies which had, by the early 1840s, earned him widespread renown as the father of the poor. This privileged existence swiftly eroded after 1844, when Baha'u'llah became one of the leading advocates of a movement that was to change the course of his country's history.
I want to stop you there, Daryl. because again, this is again really, really important. But I mean, they kind of, I guess I don't want to say foreshadowed, but okay, Baha'u'llah, as you know, born in 1817. And it said his mission began in 1852 in a dungeon, but he became involved and we also need to point out, before I finish that statement, that Baha'u'llah, let's face it, materialistically speaking, he had it made.
That's right.
Yeah, he was in an upper class family. He had connections with the government. He had a position pretty much already laid out for him. And yet he declined all of that so he could get involved in other types of philanthropies or philanthropies. And was so philanthropic in his actions that he was given the name the father of the poor. He was known by many as the father of the poor. And yet, this is what I was saying. They point out that his mission began in 1852, but then it mentions that his privileged existence swiftly eroded after 1844, which was before 1852, obviously. He became one of the leading advocates of a movement that was to change the course of his country's history. So I kind of, for someone who may have heard this for the first time, it's like, wait a minute, 1852, 1844, it's, it kind of might be a little bit confusing.
The early 19th century was a period of messianic expectations in many lands, deeply disturbed by the implications of scientific inquiry and industrialization. Earnest believers from many religious backgrounds turned to the scriptures of their faith for an understanding of the accelerating process of change. In Europe and America, groups like the Templars and the Millerites believed that they had found in the Christian sculptures evidence supporting their conviction, that history had ended, and the return of Christ was at hand.
You're waiting for me to jump in there.
Well, I know you're going to jump in there.
I just thought you might want to point out the significance of that period.
Well, the significance of that period is that throughout the world, people were expecting some spiritual change in their existence. And so many of them believed that Christ's return, they were expecting the return of Christ.
And they were, and I'm sorry, go ahead, finish your statement.
And it wasn't just Christians who were expecting the return of Christ, it was other religions as well.
Mm-hmm.
Or they were expecting some other messianic figure to appear.
And you think about, I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off, Daryl. I'm excited, just go ahead.
That's called the Messiah.
It's right, it's a Messiah,
Yeah.
okay?
You mentioned messianic expectations, that was a reference to, yeah.
A markedly similar ferment developed in the Middle East around the belief that the fulfillment of various prophecies in the Quran and Islamic traditions was imminent. So it wasn't just Christianity, it was other religions as well.
And a lot of it was in relation, not just to biblical and other prophecies, but also to the fact that people were uncomfortable with the major changes that were coming about in society as a result of science and industrialization. So it said they started looking for answers in their faith because it was like they saw the world changing in front of them.
That's called hypocrite.
Okay.
They want change. They're waiting for change. When the change comes, they cannot accept it.
Yeah, a lot of times change is uncomfortable because it does mean that we have to change in order to, to adapt to it. We have to change. And now you understand why Daryl said this will probably be a 2-day thing. I'm sorry, Daryl. It's just, go ahead.
By far the most dramatic of these millennialist movements had been one in Persia, which had focused on the person and teachings of a young merchant from the city of Shiraz, known to history as the Bab.
Okay. Anyone who's never heard this or seen this in writing, they think you just said B-O-B.
No, I said B-A-B, Bob.
B-A-B, Bob. And what is, well, go ahead. Well, no, it doesn't say what it means, does it?
No, but for anyone who wants to know, the term Bob means the gate. So for 9 years, from 1844, again, that date, 1844, to 1853, Persians of all classes had been caught up in a storm of hope and excitement, aroused by the Bab's announcement that the day of God was at hand, and that he was himself the one promised in Islamic scripture. Now you have to understand that in this day, for someone to claim that, especially in Iran, it could very well have been a death sentence, and for the Bab eventually it was. So, but humanity stood, he said, on the threshold of an era that would witness the restructuring of all aspects of life. New fields of learning, as yet inconceivable, would permit even the children of the new age to surpass the most erudite of contemporary scholars. The human race was called by God to embrace these changes through the undertaking of a transformation of its moral and spiritual life. His own mission was to prepare humanity for the event that lay at the hearts of these developments, the coming of that universal messenger of God. He whom God will make manifest, awaited by the followers of all religions.
He's pausing, and Nini has her hand up. Yes, Nini.
Well, I want to rephrase what I just said earlier. It's not about the change of totally demolish the old stuff. I think the change is called, like you just said, the renewal.
Exactly.
The renew doesn't mean, oh, the old stuff is no good. To renew is to remind the basic of love of God, that everybody need to renew the mindset, because we all only believe in one God. It doesn't mean, because I think because I'm a Christian, and a lot of time we get so hold on to the old.
Yeah.
What we learn, what we know. And then when it's renewing what you're supposed to know more, that is the problem come out.
Right.
Yeah.
So nobody said to demolish what you had and then just, oh, that's a new thing. No, the new thing is just to renew our mind, our spiritual mind, to accept, to know more, to develop more.
Yes, and as it pointed out, I mean, it says here that the Bab pointed out, remember, this started out in 1844. That's over 150 years ago. And he said new fields of learning, or at least it says new fields of learning, as yet inconceivable, would permit even the children of the new age to surpass the most erudite of contemporary scholars. Now I have a question. Daryl, do you think that the three of us and people out there probably know more than the people of 1844?
In terms of information and access, absolutely.
Yeah. And think of all the inventions that have occurred since then that we just take for granted. We might not even think of them as inventions anymore. It's just part of our life.
Right.
Think about the discoveries that have been made in science and other walks of life and so forth. And that's basically what this is saying. The Bab was saying we are in a new age, meaning at that time they're in a new age. There's going to be new areas of learning. And people pushed back against that. People pushed back against the idea of progress. They pushed back.
Right.
And he said that, yeah, all of this is going to culminate or preparing the way for he whom God will make manifest.
That's
yes.
Right.
Yes. Somebody that everybody was waiting for, but when the Bab starts talking about it, just like you pointed out, got him killed.
Yeah. I think it's time for a song.
You want to do a song?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've done this with me before. I'm so glad.
So glad.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think you have. Yes, you have. You People running around every day, wondering why things are changing so fast. Don't know what to do, don't know what to say. Got so many questions to ask. Pillar to post from coast to coast, confusion all across the land. The hidden word is what I'd like to say, but tell me what you're missing, my friend. And I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. So glad I know about the blessed beauty. I just want, I want to praise his name. So much depression, so much aggression. What's real? Who can you trust? The purpose of life, all struggle and strife. Does it end in ashes and dust? God really cares and he hears your prayers. If you'd only take time to pray. If you can't find the words, you can still be heard. He knows what you're trying to say, and that's why I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. So glad I know, so glad I'm the blessed. I know about the blessed. I just want, I wanna praise his name. Oh, so glad I know about the blessed beauty. I just want, so glad I know about the blessed his name. People running around every day, wondering why things are changing so fast. Don't know what to do, don't know what to say. Got so many questions to ask. But if they take some time and see the signs, then see the sunshine through the rain. Cause God sent down his blessed beauty. How would I use his name? And that's why I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. And I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. So glad I know about the blessed beauty. I just want, I wanna praise his name. Oh, I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. Well, to continue, how are we doing on time? Because I've cut into it so many times. But I think we're going to end up about halfway. I really do, because we said it's going to be a 2-day thing. We might be. Let's just continue.
Go ahead.
It's from where? The claim? Yeah. The claim, again, talking about his own mission was to prepare humanity for the event that lay at the hearts of these developments, the coming of that universal messenger of God, he whom God will make manifest, awaited by the followers of all religions. That's where Darrell left off. The claim had evoked violent hostility from the Muslim clergy, who taught that the process of divine revelation had ended with Muhammad, and that any assertion to the contrary represented apostasy punishable by death. Their denunciation of the Bab had soon enlisted the support of the Persian authorities. So now you're getting the government involved. I lost my place. Thousands of followers of the new faith had perished in a horrific series of massacres throughout the country. And the Bab had been publicly executed on July 9th, 1850. In an age of growing Western involvement with the Orient, these events had aroused interest and compassion in influential European circles. The nobility of the Bab's life and teachings, the heroism of his followers, and the hope for fundamental reform that had kindled that they had kindled in a darkened land, had exerted a powerful attraction for personalities ranging from Ernest Renan and Leo Tolstoy to Sarah Bernhardt and the Comte de Goguenau. I looked those up. I don't remember. I remember Leo Tolstoy. The others, I recognize their names. I can't remember what I read about. Now, because of his prominence in the defense of the Bab's cause, Baha'u'llah was arrested and brought in chains and on foot to Tehran. Protected in some measure by his impressive personal reputation, remember he was known as the father of the poor, protected in some measure by an impressive personal reputation and the social position of his family, remember he was upper class, as well as by protests which the Bahá'í pilgrims had evoked from Western embassies, he was not sentenced to death. Baha'u'llah was not sentenced to death, as influential figures at the royal court were urging. They were urging for him to be put to death. Instead, he was cast into the notorious Sia Chal, the Black Pit, the deep, vermin-infested dungeon which had been created in one of the city's abandoned reservoirs. No charges were laid, but he and some 30 companions were without appeal, kept immured in the darkness and filth of this pit, surrounded by hardened criminals, many of them under sentence of death. Around Baha'u'llah's neck was clamped a heavy chain, so notorious in penal circles as to have been given its own name. When he did not quickly perish, as had been expected, an attempt was made to poison him. The marks of the chain were to remain on his body for the rest of his life. It was in these circumstances and faced with the prospect of his own imminent death that Baha'u'llah received the first intimation of his mission. The experience of divine revelation, touched on only at secondhand in surviving accounts of the lives of the Buddha, Moses, Jesus Christ, and Muhammad, that experience of divine revelation is described graphically in Baha'u'llah's own words. And these are Baha'u'llah's words. During the days I lay in the prison of Tehran, though the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air allowed me but little sleep, still, in those infrequent moments of slumber, I felt as if something flowed from the crown of my head over my breast, even as a mighty torrent that precipitateth itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. That's kind of a physical description of like a waterfall. Every limb of my body would, as a result, be set afire. At such moments, my tongue recited what no man could bear to hear. So these are Baha'u'llah's own words of the beginning of his mission. This next section, I'm looking at the pages again. Kim, you think we should go into the next section?
Sure.
I think it's a part of it.
Okay, because it's
How are we doing on time?
It's 10:39.
Oh, good. Yes, for sure.
You don't want to pick it up from me?
I can't.
I do all the songs, man. So golly, we do some reading. I don't do all the songs, but Daryl has songs. I want to make that clear. He just won't do them. He's got really nice songs. But anyway, go ahead.
Thank you, Tony. This next section is about Baha'u'llah's exile. Eventually, still without trial or recourse, Baha'u'llah was released from prison and immediately banished from his native land to the neighboring territory of Iraq, then under the rule of the Ottoman Empire. This expulsion was the beginning of 40 years of exile, imprisonment, and bitter persecution. By 1863, Baha'u'llah concluded that the time had come to begin acquainting some of those around him with the mission which had been entrusted to him in the darkness of the Sea of Chal. This decision coincided with a new stage of the campaign of opposition to his work, which had been relentlessly pursued by the Shia Muslim clergy and representatives of the Persian government. Fearing that the acclaim which Baha'u'llah was beginning to enjoy among influential Persian visitors to Iraq would ignite popular enthusiasm in Persia, the Shah's government pressed the Ottoman authorities to remove him far from the borders and into the interior of the empire. Eventually, the Turkish government acceded to these pressures and invited the exile as its guest, invited the exile as its guest to make his residence in the capital, Constantinople. Despite the courteous terms in which the message was couched, the intention was clearly to require compliance.
But he was just a guest.
Yeah, he was just a guest. And it was an invitation.
Of course, we're being sarcastic because it was meant to be sarcastic. I mean, sure, we'll call you a guest, but are you a guest when you have to do everything that you're told? Are you a guest when you're basically a prisoner?
Right.
Are you a guest?
Right. In late April 1863, Baha'u'llah, on the eve of his departure for Constantinople, called together individuals among his companions in a garden, which was later given the name of Rizwan, or paradise, and confided the central fact of his mission. Over the next 4 years, although no open announcement was considered timely, the hearers gradually shared with trusted friends the news that the Bab's promises had been fulfilled and that the day of God had dawned. I think that's a good stopping spot.
So that phrase, day of God, if you were here and listening earlier, the Bab said, day of God is coming. Day of God is coming. It's imminent. It's here. It's almost here at least. And here's Baha'u'llah just a few years later saying, the day of God has dawned. I notice it's in quotes here. It wasn't in quotes for the Bab, but this is like a reference. This is what the Bab said.
What the Bab said was, he whom God will make manifest is coming. And this is the fulfillment of that statement.
Yes. Let's see how we're doing on time.
So
it's 10:43.
Yeah, you want to do another song?
You want to do another song?
Yes, let's do another song, and then.
So the Bab is like a Moses.
Well, actually, he's more like John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, because John the Baptist foretold the becoming of Christ.
Oh.
So in this case, the Bab is like John the Baptist, because the Bab is
Christian, but in
the Bab is foretelling of the coming of Baha'u'llah.
Jewish is Moses, no? Yes.
No, Moses was pre that. He was before all of that.
What she's saying in the Jewish faith, and I see what you're saying. I don't think I can explain it, but okay, obviously Moses is considered a manifestation of God in the Jewish faith. Okay, the Bab, again, he's usually, at least in Christian, or I'll say in Christian circles, or at least for people who came from a Christian background, we usually think of him the way we think of John the Baptist. Although John the Baptist was not a manifestation of God, we think of the Bab as he is a manifestation of God, or was a manifestation of God. But his mission was to prepare the way for Baha'u'llah just like John the Baptist prepared
for
the
Christ.
people for the coming of Christ.
Okay. What are we doing?
3 flights down.
Okay.
Only because we read about the sea itself.
Right. Okay.
Let me tell you all a story about Baha'u'llah. He was humble, he was holy, the glory of God. But they took him and they chained him in a prison underground. In that dark and dirty sea of child, they took him 3 flights down. They had my Lord in shackles. He was tortured and bound. On those dark and narrow stairways, there was sorrow all around. With the weight of heavy chains, bearing down. God said, my child, I will deliver you from 3 flights down. 3 flights down. In that prison of the ground, 1 way in, 1 way out. Where no door is found. But he had love inside. He was glory bound. God said, my child, I will deliver you from 3 flights down. Every time there's enemies, they thought that they had won. No matter just how bad it seemed, their plans would come undone. It seemed like times were darkest, like evil was born within. The omnipotent, the all-bountiful would step back in. They could get 3 flights down. That prison up to town. 1 way in, 1 way out. Where no door is found. But he had God inside. He was glory bound. God said, my child, I will deliver you down. Now sunshine follows shadow. Dawn follows night. The wings of the wrong are overcome by right. Yes, God can bring us happiness and take away our pain. He gave my Lord the victory, and in triumph now he reigns. They took him 3 flights down. That prison up to town. 1 way in, 1 way out. With no door to be found. But he had love inside. He was glory bound. God said, my child, I will from 3 flights down. So when your soul feels heavy, when there's trouble all around, just think about Baha'u'llah in that prison underground. God is on your side. Love it knows no bounds, and he can lift you out of trouble with the vision like the 3 flights down. They took it 3 flights down. That prison up to town. 1 way in, 1 way out. Where no joy is found. But he had love inside. Glory bound. God said, my child, I will deliver you from 3 flights
sit my child. I will remember you from way back down. And you told me you never my long. Way back down, bring back down. Lights down, bring 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 lights down.